Surroundings. Just turned 16 last month, this was his first time flying alone, and certainly his first time sitting in such a fancy part of the plane. His grandmother had surprised him with the upgrade, insisting that his journey to visit potential colleges should start in style. "You've worked too hard to sit in the back," she had told him while booking the tickets, a proud smile lighting up her face. "My grandson deserves the best." Andre ran his hand over the wide leather armrest, still not quite believing his luck. The seat was at least twice as wide as anything he'd sat in before, with actual legroom that meant his knees weren't jammed against the seat in front. A real pillow and blanket were neatly folded in the seat pocket, not the paper-thin ones he'd seen people using in economy on his previous flights with his family. He pulled out his phone to take a quick photo to send to his grandmother later. She would get a kick out of seeing him looking so fancy. As he framed the shot, trying to capture both himself and the luxurious surroundings, he noticed a woman watching him from the aisle. She was in her 50s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a cream-colored business suit that probably cost more than everything in Andre's suitcase combined. Her lips were pressed into a tight line as she looked from Andre to the seat number above him and back again. Without saying a word to him, she waved over a flight attendant. "Excuse me?" the woman said, her voice carrying easily across the quiet cabin. "I think there's been some mistake." The flight attendant, whose name tag read Melissa, smiled politely. "How can I help you, ma'am?" The woman gestured toward Andre with a flick of her manicured hand. "I believe this young man might be in the wrong section of the aircraft." Andre felt heat rising in his cheeks as several nearby passengers turned to look at him. He straightened in his seat, suddenly very conscious of his simple jeans and school hoodie compared to the business attire most first-class passengers wore. "This is seat 3A, Andre said quietly, double-checking his boarding pass. "That's what my ticket says." The woman barely glanced at him. "I've been a platinum member for 15 years, and I've never seen—" She paused, seeming to search for the right words. Someone so young traveling alone in first class. What she didn't say hung in the air between them. Andre had heard that tone before, seen that look. It wasn't just that he was young. Melissa looked at Andre with a warm smile. "May I see your boarding pass, sir?" Andre handed over his phone with the digital boarding pass displayed. Melissa nodded after checking it. "Everything looks in order. Seat 3A is correct." "There must be some mistake," the woman insisted, her voice growing louder. "Perhaps he snuck in during boarding confusion or switched seats when no one was looking." By now, several other passengers were openly watching the interaction. An older man across the aisle frowned, looking up from his newspaper. A couple in the row behind exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Ma'am, his boarding pass is valid for this seat," Melissa explained patiently. "Now, if you'll take your seat in 3B, we can begin our pre-departure service." The woman didn't move. "I don't feel comfortable with this situation. Can you at least check if his ticket was properly purchased? These seats cost thousands of dollars." Andre swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady despite the humiliation burning through him. "My grandmother bought this ticket for me. It's a gift because I'm visiting colleges." "A likely story," the woman muttered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Melissa's smile remained fixed, though her eyes hardened slightly. "Ma'am, I've verified his boarding pass. Now please take your seat so we can prepare for departure." Reluctantly, the woman sat down in 3B right beside Andre, though she shifted as far away from him as the seat would allow. She pulled out her phone and began tapping furiously on the screen, occasionally shooting glances at Andre that made him shrink into his seat. Andre tried to focus on the safety card in the seat pocket, studying the cartoon people putting on oxygen masks as if it were the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. Anything to avoid eye contact with the woman beside him or the curious stares of other passengers. His excitement about flying first class had evaporated. What should have been a special experience now felt like a mistake. Maybe his grandmother shouldn't have spent the extra money. Maybe he didn't belong here after all. The flight attendant returned with pre-departure drinks, offering Andre his choice first. "Orange juice, water, or soda?" she asked kindly. "Just water, please," he answered quietly. "And for you, ma'am?" Melissa asked the woman. I need to speak with the captain or the air marshal, the woman replied instead of ordering a drink. I don't feel safe. A stunned silence fell over the nearby rows. Andre froze, his hand halfway to the water glass the flight attendant had just placed on his tray table. Ma'am? Melissa asked, her professional demeanor slipping for just a moment to reveal genuine confusion. The woman leaned forward, lowering, her voice to a stage whisper that was still perfectly audible to everyone around them. This person could be anyone. Has anyone verified his identity? He could have stolen that boarding pass. He's clearly not a regular first-class passenger. Andre felt as if all the air had been sucked from the cabin. His throat tightened and he couldn't seem to catch his breath. The woman was treating him like a criminal, and for what? For daring to sit in a seat his grandmother had worked hard to afford for him? I have ID, he managed to say, reaching for his wallet with shaking hands. I can show you. That's not necessary, Melissa interrupted firmly, placing a reassuring hand on Andre's shoulder. Sir, you've done nothing wrong. Your boarding pass is valid. She turned to the woman. Ma'am, I'll need to ask you to lower your voice and stop making unfounded accusations against another passenger. The woman's face flushed with anger. I'm not making accusations, I'm expressing legitimate security concerns. Look at him. Does he look like he belongs in first class? A murmur of disapproval rippled through the cabin. The man with the newspaper across the aisle folded it neatly and fixed the woman with a stern look. Excuse me, but what exactly does a first-class passenger look like? The woman stammered. Well, I just mean, I'd like to know too, added a woman in a business suit from the row behind them. Because I'm wearing jeans under this blazer, and I'm sitting in 2A. Should I expect to be questioned about my ticket as well? The flight attendant used this moment to step back into the aisle. Ma'am, this conversation needs to end now. The boarding pass has been verified. If you continue to disrupt the cabin, I'll need to call the captain. Please do, the woman snapped, pulling out her phone again. In fact, I'm calling airport police myself. This is ridiculous. Andre watched in disbelief as the woman actually dialed a number. Was this really happening? All because his grandmother wanted to give him a special trip? Ma'am, we're about to take off. You need to put your phone in airplane mode, Melissa insisted. Not until I speak to someone in authority, the woman replied, holding the phone to her ear. Hello? Yes, I need to report a security concern on Flight 1528 at Gate C12. There's an unaccompanied minor who doesn't belong in first class, and the crew is refusing to check his identity. Andre looked down at his hands, which had balled into fists, on his lap. He was 16, hardly a minor in need of supervision. He had his driver's permit in his wallet. He'd been saving for college since he was 12, mowing lawns and tutoring younger kids in math. His grandmother had raised him to be independent, responsible, and now this stranger was calling the police on him, simply because she couldn't believe someone like him could legitimately be sitting in first class. A flight attendant he hadn't seen before appeared at the woman's side. His name tag read Carlos, and under it was a pin that said Lead Flight Attendant. Ma'am, you need to end that call immediately, Carlos said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Using a phone to call outside the aircraft during boarding is against federal regulations. The woman lowered her phone slightly but didn't hang up. I'm reporting a security concern. Surely that's an exception. There is no security concern, Carlos stated firmly. If you felt there was one, the proper procedure would be to discreetly inform a crew member, not disrupt the entire cabin, and certainly not make your own external calls. Now please end that call and put your phone in airplane mode, or we'll need to ask you to deplane. As the standoff continued, Andre noticed several passengers had their own phones out, but they weren't making calls. They were recording. The realization that this humiliating moment might end up online made his stomach twist with fresh anxiety. This was supposed to be his big weekend, visiting his dream school, imagining his future. Instead, he was being treated like a criminal, and everyone was watching. The tension in the first-class cabin had become a thick fog that everyone could feel. Despite the lead flight attendant's instructions, the woman refused to end her call. I have rights as a passenger, she insisted, her voice rising, and I demand that someone check this boy's identity before we take off. Andre sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement might somehow make the situation worse. He'd never felt so small, so unwelcome, so wrong for simply existing in a space. His grandmother had worked extra shifts for months to afford this ticket. "So you can see what you're working toward," she'd told him when she surprised him with the upgrade. Now, her gift had turned into a nightmare. Carlos, the lead flight attendant, maintained his professional demeanor despite the woman's increasing hostility. "Ma'am, I need to be very clear. You are delaying departure for 183 passengers. You are violating federal regulations by refusing to end your call. And you are harassing another passenger without cause." Harassment? The woman's eyes widened with indignation. "I'm trying to ensure everyone's safety. Do any of you even know who this person is?" A middle-aged man in a tailored suit from across the aisle spoke up. "Do we know who you are? Should we all start demanding each other's identification?" The woman shot him a glare. "This is different, and you know it." "Different how?" asked a woman with silver hair sitting in the row behind, her voice sharp with disapproval. The first woman didn't answer that question directly. Instead, she turned back to Carlos. "Look at him. He's wearing a hoodie and sneakers. Everyone else, in first class, is dressed appropriately." Andre glanced down at his clothes. The navy blue hoodie from his high school's math team, clean jeans, and his nicest sneakers, which he'd carefully wiped down before the trip. He'd thought he looked presentable. His grandmother had approved his outfit that morning over their video call, telling him he looked handsome. "Ma'am, there is no dress code in first class," Carlos explained, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Many of our regular first-class passengers travel in comfortable clothing." "This isn't about clothes," said the silver-haired woman behind them, her tone knowing. "We all understand what this is about." More phones appeared around the cabin, recording the confrontation. Andre wished he could disappear. Each second felt like an hour as the woman continued to make her case to the police on the phone. "Yes, I'm in first class on flight 1528, she was saying. "There's a young man here who doesn't belong, and the crew won't verify his identity." Carlos reached for the plane's telephone. "I'm calling the captain. This situation requires his intervention." The woman looked momentarily satisfied, believing the captain would take her side. She finally ended her call and placed her phone in her lap, not in airplane mode as required. Andre took a deep breath and found his voice. "I can show my school ID if that would help. I'm just trying to visit colleges. My grandmother bought this ticket for me," the woman scoffed. "A likely story. Do you know how much these seats cost?" $876 for a one-way ticket on this route," Andre answered quietly. "My grandmother saved up. She's been working double shifts." His honesty seemed to throw the woman off balance for a moment, but she recovered quickly. Well, anyone can make up a story. By now, several other passengers had unbuckled their seatbelts and were standing to get a better view of the confrontation. The atmosphere had shifted from uncomfortable to openly hostile, not toward Andre, but toward the woman causing the scene. "This is outrageous," declared a man in his 60s wearing a cardigan. "I've been watching this young man being patient and respectful while you've been nothing but accusatory." A flight attendant appeared from coach, looking confused by the commotion in first class. Carlos briefed her quickly, and she hurried back toward the front of the plane, presumably to update the captain. Andre's phone buzzed in his pocket. Probably. His grandmother wondering if he'd landed safely at his connection. How could he possibly explain what was happening? That her generous gift had made him a target? That a stranger was so convinced he didn't belong in first class that she'd called the police? The buzzing continued. Andre wanted desperately to answer, to hear his grandmother's reassuring voice, but he knew using his phone now would only give the woman more ammunition against him. "The police are on their way," the woman announced triumphantly, glancing around as if expecting support from her fellow passengers. Instead, she was met with cold stares and disapproving headshakes. "Good," said the silver-haired woman behind them. "They can escort you off for harassment." The woman twisted in her seat. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," the silver-haired woman continued. I've been flying first class for 30 years and I've never witnessed such appalling behavior. Carlos returned. To their row, his expression grave. Ma'am, the captain has been informed of the situation. He's asked me to remind you that interfering with a flight crew is a federal offense. I'm not interfering, the woman insisted. I'm reporting suspicious activity. There is nothing suspicious about a young man sitting in a seat he has a valid ticket for, Carlos stated firmly. The cabin door was still open and 2 airport police officers appeared at the entrance to the jetway. The lead flight attendant went to speak with them, showing them some paperwork, likely the passenger manifest. Andre's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. Police. Here because of him. What would happen now? Would they force him off the plane, check his ID, call his grandmother? The humiliation was overwhelming. Finally, the woman said, gathering her handbag as if preparing to point Andre out to the authorities. The officers approached, their expressions neutral. Carlos stepped aside to let them through. Ma'am, said the first officer, a tall woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun, we understand there's been a disturbance. Yes, officer, the woman began eagerly. We've reviewed the situation with the flight crew, the officer continued, cutting her off. We understand you've been making accusations against another passenger without cause, refusing to follow crew instructions and using your phone after being instructed to switch it off. The woman's mouth fell open in shock. But, ma'am, is your phone currently in airplane mode as required during the boarding process? The second officer asked. The woman looked down at her phone, still active in her lap. Please, put your phone in airplane mode immediately, the officer instructed. With trembling fingers, the woman complied, her face flushing crimson. Now, continued the first officer, we need to ask you some questions about the nature of your call to airport police and the accusations you've made against this young man. Andre could hardly believe what was happening. The officers weren't questioning him. They were questioning her. The second officer turned to Andre with a much gentler expression. Sir, the flight attendants have confirmed your boarding pass is valid for this seat. May I just verify your name against our information? Andre Thompson, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The officer nodded. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I apologize for the disruption to your journey. The first officer turned back to the woman. Ma'am, would you please gather your belongings and come with us to the jetway for a moment? Am I being removed from the flight? The woman asked incredulously. After I was just trying to ensure everyone's safety. We need to discuss your behavior and determine next steps, the officer replied noncommittally. Please come with us now. The woman stood up, clutching her designer handbag to her chest like a shield. This is ridiculous. I've been flying first class for 15 years. I was just being cautious. Ma'am, said the silver-haired woman behind them, her voice carrying clearly through the cabin. We all know what you were doing, and it had nothing to do with caution. As the woman moved past Andre to follow the officers, she avoided meeting anyone's eyes. The faces of the other passengers tracked her movement, most wearing expressions of open disapproval. Some still had their phones out, recording every moment of her humiliation. In the sudden quiet after their departure, Andre felt the weight of attention shift to him. But the quality of the gazes had changed. Where before there had been curiosity and perhaps suspicion, now there was sympathy, outrage on his behalf, and something that looked uncomfortably like pity. A flight attendant Andre hadn't seen before approached with a glass of orange juice. I thought you might like this, she said kindly. I'm so sorry about what happened. Thank you, Andre managed, accepting the juice with a shaky hand. He took a sip, grateful for something to do that didn't involve making eye contact with anyone. The man in the cardigan leaned across the aisle. Son, I want you to know that woman doesn't represent most of us. What happened to you was wrong. Andre nodded, not trusting himself to speak without his voice breaking. The kindness was almost harder to bear than the cruelty had been. His phone buzzed again in his pocket, his grandmother still trying to reach him. What would he tell her? That her special gift had turned into a public spectacle? that people were filming him, pitying him. The minutes stretched on with no sign of the woman, the officers, or the lead flight attendant returning. Passengers began to shift restlessly in their seats, checking watches and sighing about the delay. Andre felt responsible for their inconvenience, though he knew rationally that it was the woman who had caused the problem. Finally, Carlos returned to the cabin, followed by the captain, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and an authoritative presence. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain addressed the first-class cabin, "I apologize for the delay. We had a situation that needed resolution before departure." A murmur went through the passengers. "The passenger in question has been rebooked on a later flight," the captain continued. "We do not tolerate harassment or discrimination of any kind on our aircraft." A smattering of applause broke out among the passengers. Andre sank lower in his seat, wishing he could be anywhere but the center of this drama. The captain approached Andre directly. "Mr. Thompson, on behalf of the airline, I want to personally apologize for your experience today. This is not representative of how we treat our passengers." "Thank you," Andre managed, his voice barely audible. "We'll be underway shortly," the captain assured everyone before returning to the cockpit. Carlos began rearranging the cabin, moving a businessman from another row into the now empty seat 3B beside Andre. The man, in his 40s with kind eyes, behind wire-rimmed glasses, settled in with a friendly nod to Andre. "Quite an eventful boarding process," he commented mildly. "I'm Lee, by the way." "Andre," he replied, still feeling shell-shocked. "First time in first class?" Lee asked, buckling his seatbelt. Andre nodded. "My grandmother's gift for my college visit trip." "Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman," Lee said. "Which schools are you visiting?" As the plane prepared for takeoff, Andre found himself sitting next to Lee, who seemed genuinely interested in his college plans. The conversation provided a welcome distraction from the humiliating scene that had just played out. "My top choice is Westbrook University," Andre explained, feeling more at ease as they discussed something he was passionate about. "They have an amazing computer science program." Lee's eyebrows raised slightly. "Westbrook? Their admissions are notoriously competitive. You must be quite the student." Andre shrugged modestly. "I've worked hard. My grandmother always says education is the one thing nobody can take away from you." "Your grandmother sounds wise," Lee remarked. "Is she the one who raised you?" Andre nodded. "Since I was 7. My parents—" He paused, not wanting to get into the whole story with a stranger, even a friendly one. Lee seemed to understand. "No need to explain. My aunt raised me, so I get it." The plane began to taxi, the engines humming to life. Andre felt a weight lifting from his chest as they moved farther from the gate and the terrible scene that had unfolded there. Soon they'd be in the air, and he could focus on the exciting weekend ahead. His first solo college visit, a chance to see if Westbrook felt like home. But the incident had left a mark. Even as flight attendants moved through the cabin with warm towels and taking drink orders for after takeoff, Andre noticed several passengers shooting glances his way. Some offered sympathetic smiles, while others whispered to their seatmates while looking in his direction. He was still the center of attention, just in a different way. Carlos approached their row, leaning down to speak quietly to Andre. "Mr. Thompson, I want to apologize again for what happened. The passenger who caused the disruption has been placed on our no-fly list pending an investigation." "No-fly list?" Andre repeated, surprised by the serious consequences. Carlos nodded. "Discriminatory behavior and interfering with crew instructions are taken very seriously by the airline. The captain would like to speak with you after we reach cruising altitude, if that's all right with you." Andre's stomach tightened. "Am I in trouble?" "Not at all," Carlos assured him with a warm smile. "Quite the opposite. He wants to make sure you're okay and offer his personal apologies." As Carlos moved on, Lee turned to Andre. "Sounds like you're getting the full VIP treatment now." Andre wasn't sure how to feel about that. He hadn't asked for any of this. Not the confrontation, not the attention that followed, and certainly not special treatment from the captain. He just wanted to be treated like everyone else. To belong in this seat, his grandmother had worked so hard to provide for him. The plane lifted off smoothly, rising above the clouds. Under different circumstances, Andre would have been thrilled by his premium window seat view, perhaps taking photos to share with his grandmother later. Instead, he sat quietly, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 30 minutes. Once they reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign dinged off. Flight attendants began preparing the first-class meal service, bringing out tablecloths and real silverware. Andre watched with fascination despite his lingering discomfort. "First time seeing the full first-class service too?" Lee asked, noticing Andre's interest. "Yeah, it's pretty fancy." "Wait till you taste the food," Lee said with a wink. "Actually edible, unlike what they serve in the back." A different flight attendant approached their row. "Mr. Thompson, the captain has a few minutes now if you'd like to come to the front." Andre unbuckled his seatbelt and stood, acutely aware of the eyes following him as he made his way to the front of the cabin. The flight attendant led him to the area just outside, the cockpit door where the captain was waiting. "Mr. Thompson," the captain said, extending his hand. "I'm Captain Rivera. I wanted to personally apologize for the treatment you received during boarding." "Thank you, sir," Andre replied, shaking the captain's hand. "But it wasn't your fault." As the captain, "Everything that happens on my aircraft is ultimately my responsibility," Captain Rivera said. "What happened to you today was unacceptable, and I want you to know that we've taken appropriate action regarding the passenger involved." Andre nodded, unsure what to say. "I understand this is your first time in first class?" the captain asked. "Yes, sir. My grandmother surprised me with the upgrade for my college visit." The captain smiled. "Well, I want to make sure the rest of your experience with us is positive. Carlos tells me you're visiting Westbrook University?" "Yes, sir. Their computer science program is my top choice." "Excellent school," the captain nodded approvingly. "My daughter graduated from there last year. She studied environmental science." They chatted for a few more minutes, the captain asking about Andre's academic interests and offering tips about the campus. It was a surprisingly normal conversation, and Andre found himself relaxing. As they were wrapping up, the captain added, "By the way, I've arranged for a member of our ground staff to meet you when we land. They'll escort you to your connection and make sure the rest of your journey goes smoothly." "That's really not necessary," Andre began, feeling awkward about the special treatment. "I insist," Captain Rivera said firmly. "It's the least we can do." When Andre returned to his seat, the meal service was just beginning. Lee had already received his drink, a sparkling water with lime. "How was the captain?" Lee asked. "Really nice, actually," Andre replied, settling back into his seat. "His daughter went to Westbrook." "Small world," Lee commented. "Did he say anything about what happened?" "Just that they're taking it seriously," Andre said, accepting a glass of apple juice from the flight attendant. "He's arranged for someone to meet me when we land and help me with my connection." Lee nodded thoughtfully. "That's good. The airline should be falling all over themselves to make this right." The first course arrived, a small salad with fresh greens, walnuts, and crumbled cheese accompanied by warm bread. Andre had never seen airplane food that looked so appetizing. As they ate, Lee kept the conversation flowing, asking about Andre's academic interests and sharing stories from his own college days. Andre found himself laughing at Lee's tales of disastrous roommates and all-night study sessions. "So you're interested in computer science?" Lee asked as their main courses arrived. Andre had chosen the chicken, which came with roasted vegetables and some kind of grain he didn't recognize. "Yeah, especially AI and machine learning," Andre replied, cutting into his chicken. "I've been coding since I was 12. "Self-taught?" Lee asked, seeming genuinely impressed. Andre nodded. "At first. Then my high school started offering computer science classes last year. Before that, I did a lot of online courses and tutorials." "That's impressive dedication for someone your age," Lee remarked. "Have you built anything interesting?" Andre hesitated, not wanting to seem like he was bragging, but Lee seemed genuinely interested. "Well, last year I created an app that helps my grandmother track her medications. It reminds her when to take them and alerts me if she misses a dose." That's not just impressive, that's genuinely useful, Lee said. Have you considered developing it further? The conversation continued through dessert. A warm chocolate chip cookie with vanilla ice cream that Andre thought might be the best thing he'd ever eaten on an airplane, or maybe anywhere. As the flight attendants cleared their trays, Andre noticed that the mood in the cabin had shifted. The initial tension from the boarding incident had dissipated, replaced by the normal quiet hum of first-class travel. Passengers worked on laptops, read books, or dozed under plush blankets. No one was staring at him anymore. I should tell you something, Lee said suddenly, his voice dropping to ensure only Andre could hear. I haven't been entirely forthright with you. Andre tensed immediately. What now? Lee reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to Andre. I'm actually on the computer science faculty at Westbrook. I lead the artificial intelligence research lab there. Andre stared at the card, then at Lee, his mind racing. You're Professor Lee Chen, the one who published that paper on neural networks last year? Lee looked surprised. You've read my paper? Of course. Your work on optimizing deep learning models for limited processing power is groundbreaking, Andre said, excitement momentarily overriding his usual reserve. I've been trying to implement some of your methods in my own projects. Now it was Lee's turn to look impressed. Most undergraduates struggle with that paper, let alone high school students. My grandmother bought me a subscription to the Journal of Computational Intelligence for my birthday last year, Andre explained. I've read a very issue cover to cover. Lee smiled thoughtfully. You know, I'm giving a talk at the prospective students event tomorrow. Will you be attending? Yes, sir. That's actually why I'm visiting this weekend. Excellent. And please call me Lee. Sir makes me feel ancient, he said with a chuckle. If you'd like, I could show you around our labs while you're on campus. Give you a behind-the-scenes tour. Andre couldn't believe what he was hearing. A personal tour from Professor Lee Chen, one of the leading researchers in the field. That would be amazing. Thank you. My pleasure. I'm always on the lookout for promising students, Lee said. Then after a pause, he added, You know, we have a summer program for exceptional high school students interested in AI research. The application deadline has passed, but I have some discretion as program director. Andre's heart raced. The Westbrook Summer Research Program was legendary. Only 20 students accepted nationwide each year, working directly with faculty on cutting-edge research. Getting in would practically guarantee his admission to Westbrook the following year. I would be incredibly interested, Andre managed, trying not to sound too eager. Good. Send me your transcript and a sample of your coding work when you get home, Lee said. Based on what you've told me, I think you'd be an excellent candidate. Andre was speechless. This flight had started with the worst kind of humiliation, being made to feel like he didn't belong, and now here was one of his academic heroes not only treating him as an equal, but offering him an extraordinary opportunity. The irony wasn't lost on him. If that woman hadn't caused such a scene, he would have been sitting next to her for the entire flight. He never would have met Professor Chen. Sometimes, he reflected, bad situations led to unexpected blessings. The rest of the flight passed in a blur of excited conversation. Lee explained more about the summer program and the research his lab was currently conducting. Andre shared his ideas about improving his medication tracking app and other projects he'd been working on in his spare time. By the time the captain announced their initial descent, Andre felt like he'd gained not just a professional contact but a mentor. Lee had given him his email address and made him promise to send his application materials as soon as he returned home. One more thing, Lee said as they prepared for landing. I happen to sit on the undergraduate scholarship committee. With your academic background and clear aptitude, I think you'd be a strong candidate for a full ride. Andre's eyes widened. A full scholarship? Really? Based on what you've told me about your achievements, absolutely, Lee confirmed. We're always looking for students with exceptional promise, particularly those who've overcome obstacles. The plane began its final approach, the city grid becoming clearer through the window. Andre watched the buildings grow larger, thinking about how drastically this journey had changed course. What had begun as a humiliating confrontation had transformed into potentially the most important connection of his academic career. As the wheels touched down on the runway, Andre couldn't help but think about the woman who'd been removed from the flight. Her assumptions about him, that he couldn't possibly belong in first class, that he must have snuck in or stolen someone's boarding pass, had been based entirely on how he looked. If only she could see him now, sitting next to a prestigious professor who saw his potential rather than his appearance, discussing opportunities that could shape his entire future. Andre wasn't normally one to enjoy ironic justice, but in this case he couldn't help but appreciate it. The plane taxied to the gate, and passengers began gathering their belongings. Lee handed Andre a second business card. "This has my personal cell number on the back. If you have any questions about the application process or need advice about anything, don't hesitate to call." "Thank you, Professor Chen," Andre said, slipping the card carefully into his wallet. "For everything." "Lee, remember?" the professor corrected with a smile. "And thank you for making this flight much more interesting than I expected. I look forward to reading your application." As they deplaned, Andre spotted a uniformed airline employee holding a sign with his name. The captain had been true to his word about arranging assistance. "Mr. Thompson," the airline representative said, "I'm Tanya. I'll be escorting you to your connecting flight." Andre turned to say goodbye to Lee, but the professor was already speaking to Tanya. "I'll be accompanying Mr. Thompson as well," Lee informed her. "We're headed to the same destination." Tanya nodded. "Of course, Professor Chen. It's good to see you again." As they walked through the terminal, Andre couldn't help but notice how differently people treated him in Lee's company. The woman at the customer service desk smiled warmly. A hurried businessman stepped aside to let them pass. It was a stark contrast to the treatment he'd received earlier, and it wasn't lost on Andre that the only thing that had changed was who stood beside him. The realization was both powerful and unsettling. The airline lounge was nothing like Andre had ever experienced. Plush chairs, free food, charging stations at every seat, and most surprisingly, absolute quiet despite being filled with travelers. Tanya, their airline escort, had insisted on bringing them here during their 2-hour layover. "It's the least we can do after what happened," she explained, handing Andre a voucher for a complimentary meal in the lounge. "Captain Rivera called ahead to make sure you were taken care of." Professor Chen Lee seemed completely at home in these surroundings, grabbing a coffee and settling into a comfortable chair across from Andre. "You might as well enjoy the perks," he said with a smile. "Though I suspect this won't be your last time in a place like this." Andre looked around, taking it all in. "My grandmother is going to think I made all this up when I tell her." "Make sure you get a picture to show her," Lee suggested, gesturing around the elegant space. Andre pulled out his phone, but hesitated. "Actually, I should probably call her. She's probably worried since I didn't text her when we landed." "Of course," Lee said. "I'll get us some food while you make your call." Andre found a quiet corner and dialed his grandmother's number. She answered on the first ring. "Andre, are you all right? I've been trying to reach you." Just the sound of her voice made the tension in his shoulders release. "I'm fine, Grandma. Sorry I didn't call sooner. A lot happened on the flight." "What? Do you mean, is everything okay?" Andre took a deep breath, unsure how to explain. "There was an incident during boarding. A woman didn't think I belonged in first class." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When his grandmother spoke again, her voice had that steel edge he recognized from whenever she dealt with people who underestimated either of them. "What happened exactly?" "She made a scene, said I must have snuck in. She even called the police." "She did what?" Andre winced, holding the phone away from his ears slightly. "It's okay, Grandma. The airline handled it. They made her leave the flight." "They better have. Of all the nerve." "Grandma, it's really okay. Something good actually came out of it," Andre cut in, eager to shift the conversation away from the humiliating parts. "The guy they moved to sit next to me turned out to be a professor at Westbrook. He runs the AI lab there." "A professor at Westbrook?" His grandmother's voice shifted from outrage to interest. "Professor Lee Chen. He's actually one of the researchers I've been reading about. And guess what? He's offered to show me around." The lab's tomorrow and he thinks I should apply for their summer program. He said I might even qualify for a full scholarship. Andre, that's wonderful. See? I always told you things happen for a reason. Andre smiled. His grandmother's unwavering optimism was one of her greatest gifts to him. I guess sometimes they do. So this professor, he recognized your talent? He could tell how special you are? He seemed impressed with my app and the other projects I told him about. We spent most of the flight talking about his research. His grandmother's voice swelled with pride. That's my boy. Making connections with university professors at 16. Just wait until I tell everyone at church. Andre laughed. Grandma, please don't make it a bigger deal than it is. It is a big deal, she insisted. This could be your ticket to Westbrook. After all your hard work, you deserve this opportunity. As they continued chatting, Andre noticed a commotion near the lounge entrance. A cluster of people had gathered around someone's phone, watching something with great interest. He didn't think much of it until he caught fragments of their conversation. Kicked off the flight. Can you believe she called the police? Going viral already? A cold feeling settled in Andre's stomach. Grandma, I need to go. I'll call you when I reach the hotel, okay? After saying goodbye, Andre walked cautiously toward the group. Lee was already there, peering over someone's shoulder at a phone screen. When he spotted Andre, his expression turned concerned. Andre, you might want to see this, Lee said, beckoning him over. The businessman holding the phone looked up. Is this you, kid? He asked, turning the screen so Andre could see. It was a social media post, already accumulating thousands of likes and shares. The caption read, "White woman calls police on black teen in first class, gets removed from flight instead. Flying while black." Below was a video taken during the confrontation. Andre watched in horror as the scene played out from WhitePassenger's perspective, the woman's accusations, his attempt. The boarding process was nearly complete as Andre settled into his spacious first-class seat, trying not to look too amazed by his to explain, the flight attendant's intervention, and finally the police escorting her off the plane. The businessman shook his head. Unbelievable how people still act this way in 2025. Another traveler looked up from her own phone. It's on 3 different platforms now. The airline's PR team must be in crisis mode. Andre felt lightheaded. What had been a personal humiliation was now public spectacle. Thousands of strangers were watching his worst moment, commenting on it, sharing it. Lee placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. Let's go sit down, he suggested quietly, guiding Andre away from the crowd. Once they were seated in a private corner of the lounge, Lee spoke. I'm sorry you're having to deal with this. Social media can be relentless. Andre stared at his hands. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to visit a college like a normal student. I know, Lee said, but unfortunately, what happened to you isn't as uncommon as it should be. That's why these videos resonate with so many people. They've experienced similar situations themselves. Andre's phone began buzzing with notifications. He looked down to see messages from friends back home. Dude, is this you? OMG, just saw you on TikTok. You're trending. Even his high school's social justice club had tagged him in a post. Our own Andre Thompson standing strong against discrimination. We're proud of you. Flying while black. Westview High Pride. This is a nightmare, Andre muttered, switching his phone to silent. It might feel that way right now, Lee acknowledged. But consider this. What happened today was wrong. The woman made assumptions about you based solely on your appearance. By becoming public, her behavior is being called out. And maybe that will make someone else think twice before doing the same thing. Andre wasn't so sure. Or maybe it just makes me that kid from the airplane video forever. Only if you let it define you, Lee said. You're also that brilliant young developer who created a life-saving medication app. You're that student who understood complex neural network theory at 16. Those things define you much more than one unfortunate incident. Before Andre could respond, Tanya approached their table looking concerned. Mr. Thompson, I've just received a call from our corporate communications department. They're aware of the video circulating online and would like to speak with you. Why? Andre asked, instantly wary. They want to discuss how the airline should respond publicly, Tanya explained. They're also concerned about potential media inquiries you might receive. Lee frowned. He's a minor. They shouldn't be putting this on him. I understand your concern, Professor Chen, Tanya said. They specifically mentioned they want to make sure Andre feels supported, not exploited. They're offering media training and legal counsel if he needs it. Andre looked between them, feeling overwhelmed. I don't want to talk to reporters or be in the news. I just want to visit Westbrook and go home. I'll communicate that to them, Tanya assured him. But there's something else you should know. The passenger who was removed from the flight has been identified online. She's the CEO of a tech startup. Great, Andre muttered. So now there's even more attention. Lee leaned forward. What's the company's response been? They've issued a statement saying they're investigating the incident and that the views of their employees do not necessarily reflect company values, Tanya said, but their social media accounts are being flooded with comments. The situation was spiraling further out of Andre's control. What had begun as one woman's prejudice was now affecting her company, the airline's public image, and most distressingly, Andre's privacy. Our boarding for the connecting flight begins in 30 minutes, Tanya said. I'll escort you directly to the gate when you're ready. We've arranged for you to board first to avoid any attention. After she left, Andre put his head in his hands. This is too much. Lee was quiet for a moment. You know, when I was about your age, something similar happened to me, he finally said. Andre looked up, surprised. It was 1997, long before social media, Lee continued. I was at a scientific conference with my undergraduate mentor. I was the only Asian student there. During a break, I was looking at some equipment displays, and a security guard accused me of trying to steal company secrets to take back to my country. That's terrible, Andre said. It was humiliating, Lee agreed. My mentor intervened, made quite a scene actually. The guard was fired eventually, but there were no viral videos, no public outrage. Just a quiet dismissal and life moved on. He paused. Sometimes I wonder if that was better or worse. The pain was private, but so was the accountability. Andre considered this. I never asked for the spotlight, but maybe you're right that there's some value in this being public. The attention will fade, Lee assured him. But hopefully, the lesson won't. Not for that woman, not for the airline, not for the thousands watching the video. The boarding announcement for their flight interrupted their conversation. True to her word, Tanya appeared to escort them to the gate, using employee passages to avoid the main terminal where passengers might recognize Andre from the now viral video. As they approached the gate, Andre noticed a group of people huddled around a laptop. A news website was open, the headline clearly visible. CEO removed from flight after racial profiling incident. Tanya quickly guided them past the group to the boarding door. We'll get you on first, she said, handing their boarding passes to the gate agent. The agent's eyes widened slightly upon seeing Andre. Oh, you're just a passenger trying to get to his destination, Lee interrupted smoothly. Shall we board? The agent nodded, scanning their passes. Of course, right this way. Once they were settled in their first-class seats, the airline had upgraded Lee as well, placing him next to Andre again. The reality of the situation truly hit home. Flight attendants kept glancing at him with sympathetic smiles. A passenger walking to the bathroom did a double take as he passed their row. This is my new normal, isn't it? Andre said quietly to Lee. At least for a while. For a while, Lee agreed. But you'd be surprised how quickly the world moves on to the next story. And in the meantime, you'll be busy with the summer program application and preparing for your senior year. The thought of the summer program provided a welcome distraction. Do you really think I have a chance at the full scholarship? More than a chance, Lee said confidently. Your academic record is impressive, and your independent projects show exceptional initiative. The committee looks for students who've overcome obstacles, who've shown resilience. I'd say today's events, challenging as they've been, only strengthen your application. Andre hadn't thought of it that way. Perhaps there was a silver lining to this cloud after all. As the rest of the passengers boarded, Andre's phone buzzed again. This time it was his grandmother, sending a link to yet another news article about the incident with the message, "Holding my tongue about this woman, but remember what I always tell you. Living well is the best revenge. Show them all what you're capable of." Andre smiled, texting back, "Already working on it. Met someone who can help me get into Westbrook." Her response came quickly. "See? God works in mysterious ways. Sometimes the door you need opens because someone else slammed one in your face." Looking around the first-class cabin at the same luxury that had started all this trouble, Andre felt a strange sense of peace settling over him. His grandmother was right. The woman who'd tried to remove him from this space had instead opened doors he hadn't even known existed. The captain's voice came over the intercom, welcoming everyone aboard and announcing their departure. Unlike the previous flight, this announcement was followed by something unexpected. "Before we depart, I want to emphasize that this airline is committed to creating a welcoming environment for all passengers. Discrimination or harassment of any kind will not be tolerated. Thank you for choosing to fly with us today." A murmur went through the cabin. Several passengers looked in Andre's direction, some offering encouraging smiles or nods of solidarity. "Looks like your experience is already creating change," Lee observed quietly. As the plane began to taxi, Andre gazed out the window at the airport receding behind them. Today had been a roller coaster, from humiliation to opportunity, from anonymity to unwanted fame. But through it all, he'd remained standing. His grandmother's voice echoed in his mind. "They can try to make you feel small, but only you decide your true size." Today, despite everything, Andre felt taller than ever. 3 days had passed since the incident on the plane, and Andre was back home, sitting at his small desk in the room he'd grown up in. The walls around him told his story: academic, certificates, coding competition medals, and photos of him with his grandmother at various school events. A new edition stood propped against his lamp, a brochure from Westbrook University signed by Professor Lee Chen with the words, "See you this summer," scrawled across the top. The campus visit had been everything Andre had hoped for, and more. True to his word, Lee had given him a personal tour of the AI research facilities, introduced him to faculty and current students, and even arranged for him to sit in on an advanced computer science lecture. By the time Andre boarded his return flight, his application for the summer program was already submitted, with Lee's glowing recommendation attached. But now, back in the quiet of his room, Andre found himself staring at his computer screen, where a different story was playing out. The video of the airplane incident had indeed gone viral, accumulating millions of views across multiple platforms. News outlets had picked it up, with headlines ranging from factual, "Woman removed from flight after confrontation with teen," to sensationalized, "CEO's first-class freakout racism in the friendly skies." Andre had declined all interview requests, despite offers from major networks. His grandmother had fielded calls from reporters camped outside their modest two-bedroom house until the local police asked them to move along. Even his high school principal had called to offer support and ask if Andre needed time off to deal with the attention. A soft knock at his door pulled Andre away from the screen. His grandmother entered, carrying 2 mugs of her special cinnamon tea. "Thought you might need this," she said, setting one mug on his desk. "You've been awfully quiet since you got back." Andre accepted the tea gratefully. "Just processing everything. It's been a lot." His grandmother pulled up the spare chair and sat beside him. "Want to talk about it?" Andre sighed, closing the browser tab with the latest news story about the incident. "I never wanted to be the center of all this attention. I just wanted to check out a college, you know? Now I'm some kind of symbol." "A symbol of standing your ground with dignity," his grandmother noted. "That's not such a bad thing to be known for, I guess," Andre said, unconvinced. "But some of the comments online, They're using what happened to me to say really harsh things about that woman, calling for her to lose her job, boycotting her company. It feels out of proportion. His grandmother studied him thoughtfully. You're worried about her? Not exactly worried, Andre struggled to articulate his feelings. She did something wrong, yes. She humiliated me and made assumptions based on how I look. But does she deserve to have her whole life turned upside down? To maybe lose everything she's worked for? That's your compassionate heart talking, his grandmother said, patting his hand. It's one of the things I love most about you. Even after someone hurts you, you can still see their humanity. Andre scrolled through his emails, pausing at one from the airline's corporate office. The airline wants me to participate in their new diversity training program. They're calling it Learning from Real Experiences. They'd pay me as a consultant. And how do you feel about that? Part of me thinks it could be good, you know? Help make sure this doesn't happen to someone else. But another part just wants to move on and focus on school and the summer program. His grandmother nodded understandingly. You don't have to decide right away. Give yourself time. Another email caught Andre's eye, from an unfamiliar address, with the subject line, "A sincere apology." He clicked it open cautiously. It's from her, he said quietly. The woman from the plane. His grandmother straightened. What does she say? Andre read aloud. Dear Andre, you don't know me beyond our unfortunate interaction on the flight last week. My behavior was inexcusable, and I am deeply sorry for the hurt and humiliation I caused you. There is no justification for my assumptions or actions that day. He continued reading. Since the incident, I have had to confront uncomfortable truths about myself and the unconscious biases I clearly harbor. I've begun working with a diversity consultant and am committed to educating myself about privilege and discrimination. I don't expect forgiveness, nor am I asking you to help rehabilitate my image. I simply wanted you to know that what happened has forced me to examine my beliefs and behaviors in ways I should have done long ago. The email ended with, The airline informed me of your impressive academic achievements and future plans. Your dignity throughout our encounter speaks volumes about your character. I wish you every success at Westbrook and beyond. Respectfully, Patricia Winters. Andre sat back in his chair, surprised by the unexpected message. She actually apologized. A real apology too, not just a sorry if you were offended kind of thing. His grandmother looked thoughtful. That couldn't have been easy for her to write, knowing how public this all became. No, I guess not, Andre agreed. Should I respond? Only, if you want to, sweetheart, you don't owe her anything. Andre stared at the email for a long moment. I think I will. Not right away, but eventually. It feels like the right thing to do. His grandmother smiled proudly. You've always known the right thing, even when it's not the easy thing. Andre's phone buzzed with a text from his best friend. Dude, you're trending again. Some CEO just announced a new scholarship fund for minority students in STEM and mentioned your story as the inspiration. Andre quickly searched for news about this development. Sure enough, the CEO of a major tech company had pledged $5 million to establish a scholarship program for underrepresented students interested in technology fields. In the press release, the CEO mentioned being moved by recent events highlighting the barriers that still exist for young people of color, even in spaces where intelligence and merit should be the only factors that matter. Looks like your experience is creating real change, his grandmother observed, reading over his shoulder. I had nothing to do with this, Andre protested. You had everything to do with it, she countered. Your dignity in the face of discrimination inspired people. That's powerful. Andre wasn't sure how to feel about being an unwitting catalyst for social change. Part of him was glad something positive was coming from the humiliating experience, but another part still wished he could return to anonymity. His email pinged again. This time it was from Professor Chen, with a simple message. Application received and reviewed by the committee. Decision made. Call me. Andre's heart raced as he grabbed his phone and dialed Lee's number. His grandmother watched anxiously, picking up on his sudden tension. Professor Chen? It's Andre. Andre, good to hear. From you. I wanted to deliver this news personally rather than by email. The committee has reviewed your application for the summer research program. Andre held his breath. Not only have you been accepted with a full scholarship for the program, but the university has decided to offer you early admission with a full 4-year scholarship, beginning after your high school graduation next year. Andre nearly dropped the phone. Early admission? A full scholarship? Are you serious? His grandmother clutched his arm, her eyes wide with hope. Completely serious, Lee confirmed. Your academic record is exemplary, your recommendation letters outstanding, and your personal projects demonstrate exceptional aptitude. The committee was unanimously impressed. I don't know what to say, Andre stammered. Say you'll accept? Lee chuckled. We're eager to have you join us at Westbrook. Yes, of course I accept, Andre exclaimed, grinning at his grandmother, who was already wiping away tears of joy. After ending the call, Andre sat in stunned silence for a moment before his grandmother engulfed him in a tight hug. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. So proud. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Grandma, Andre said, his own eyes filling with tears. All those extra shifts you worked, all the times you helped me with projects even when you were exhausted. And every minute was worth it, she said firmly. I always knew you were destined for great things. As they celebrated with impromptu, dancing around the small living room, Andre's phone continued to buzz with notifications. The outside world still wanted his attention, his comments, his presence in the ongoing conversations about race, privilege, and belonging in America. But for now, in the safety of his grandmother's arms, none of that mattered. Later that evening, after his grandmother had gone to bed, Andre sat at his desk again, staring at Patricia Winters's email. After careful thought, he began to type his response. Ms. Winters, thank you for your apology. It couldn't have been easy to write, and I appreciate your honesty. What happened on that plane was difficult for both of us, though in very different ways. I believe that people should be judged by their character and actions, not by assumptions based on appearance. I'm glad this experience has led you to reflection and growth, as it has for me as well. He paused, considering his next words carefully. I've recently been accepted to a summer research program at Westbrook University, which has also offered me early admission with a full scholarship. I'm sharing this not to boast, but to illustrate that opportunities open up when we look past surface judgments to see the potential in others. I wish you well in your journey forward. Respectfully, Andre Thompson. After sending the email, Andre felt a sense of closure. He opened a new document on his computer and began typing notes for his latest app idea, an AI-driven platform to connect underrepresented students with mentors in their fields of interest. Professor Chen had already expressed enthusiasm about helping him develop it during the summer program. The next morning, Andre came downstairs to find his grandmother reading the local newspaper at the kitchen table. She looked up with a mischievous smile. You made the paper again, she said, turning it around to show him. The headline read, Local Teen Awarded Prestigious Scholarship After Viral Incident. Andre groaned. Will this ever end? Eventually, his grandmother assured him. But in the meantime, this is a story worth telling. A young man who faced discrimination with dignity and came out stronger on the other side. People need these stories, Andre. Andre considered her words as he poured himself a bowl of cereal. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps his experience could serve as both a warning about the harm of assumptions and an inspiration for overcoming obstacles. His phone buzzed with a text from Professor Chen. Just heard from Patricia Winters. She's donated $250,000 to establish a new scholarship fund at Westbrook, specifically for students from underrepresented backgrounds. She mentioned your gracious response to her apology as her inspiration. Andre stared at the message in disbelief, then showed it to his grandmother. Well, I'll be, she said, impressed. Seems like your words had quite an impact. I just wrote what I felt, Andre said with a shrug. And that's the most powerful thing of all, his grandmother replied. Honest, Words from a good heart. Later that afternoon, Andre received an unexpected call from a number he didn't recognize. Hesitantly, he answered. Hello? Andre? This is Miguel Santos from the National Science Foundation. We've been following your story and we're impressed. Not only by your academic achievements, but by how you've handled a challenging situation with such maturity. We'd like to invite you to speak at our annual conference on diversity in STEM next month. Andre was speechless for a moment. I'm honored, but I've never given a speech at something like that before. That's exactly why we want you, Miguel explained. Yours is an authentic voice and experience. We can provide coaching if you'd like, but we're most interested in your genuine perspective. After discussing the details, Andre agreed to consider the invitation and let them know his decision within the week. When he told his grandmother about it over dinner, she beamed with pride. You see? Sometimes when one door closes, or in your case, when someone tries to make you feel like you don't belong at the door, a dozen more open up. I'm not sure about speaking in front of all those people, Andre admitted. You'll find the words when the time comes, his grandmother assured him. Just speak from your heart like you always do. That night, as Andre worked on his summer project ideas, he reflected on the journey of the past week. From the humiliation of being questioned in first class to receiving a full scholarship to his dream school, from unwanted viral fame to potentially becoming a voice for change, life had taken him on a wild ride. He opened his email to find a new message from Patricia Winters, thanking him for his gracious response and informing him of her donation to Westbrook. She ended with, "Your maturity and forgiveness have taught me more than any corporate training ever could. You turned what could have been just another ugly incident into an opportunity for growth and positive change. Not just for me, but potentially for many others through the scholarship fund. Thank you for that gift." Andre smiled as he closed his laptop for the night. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. They can try to make you feel small, but only you decide your true size. In responding to prejudice with dignity and to an apology with grace, Andre had discovered just how big he could be. The woman, who had questioned his right to be in first class, had inadvertently set him on a path to places far more important than a seat on an airplane. And for that, in a strange way, he was almost grateful.